What's up guys, Juggalo here, and today's video is going to be a up-to-date, I guess you're going to call it water cooling recommendations. I do keep my water cooling guide that I've developed, and I try to keep it up-to-date as possible. And if there is new information that comes out, again, I try to keep it as up-to-date as possible via any of the forums that I'm part of that I created the guides for, as well as my blog channel, I guess you want to call it, with water cooling information as well. And I know it's getting Christmas time, it's getting cold out. When it gets cold out, it's perfect for looking into the water cooling world. I know since I started water cooling, it has definitely increased in price as far as getting water cooling items and everything like that. It probably jumped maybe 50 to $100 to get a decent kit. So just keep in mind, water cooling is a niche for a lot of people. I personally like doing it. I like building it. I like making a custom loop, calling it my own, saying that I did this and not a lot of people can do this. Water cooling, like I said before, like many times, can help you in the overclocking field. It may not give you the opportunity to give you a higher overclock because there's CPU limitations, RAM, motherboard, etc. But it can help you overclock a little if pretty much you have the ideal conditions that will allow you to overclock your processor properly. So that being said, so let's get started. I will have a link to where, pretty much where I post my information at, where I got some new information as well. So, alright, if you guys don't know, this is kind of going to be a redo video of what water cooling is. So some parts you may know, some kind of parts I might repeat myself with. So this is going to be just a general explanation of water cooling and everything like that. And now again, I will have a guide, so when I talk in the video, you'll be able to see visually what I have with the guides I created. Alright, pretty much what is water cooling? A lot of people ask when I'm going to, when they say, oh, I build computers, t-shirt. Water cooling essentially is like how your radiator works in your car. You have coolant going through and your radiator cools that via, fairly large radiator. So I just say it's like that, but on a smaller scale, and it can be kind of expensive. Okay, tubing. There's going to be different types of tubing. The latest craze right now is acrylic tubing. It can cost a little bit more than standard tubing. It also takes up more of your time as far as bending everything like that. And then again, cost-wise, because you have to get the right tools, you may have to improvise some tools and everything like that. When you're water cooling, you don't want to mix any metals. Aluminum pretty much with any brass, stainless steel, or anything like that. Pretty much you want to steer clear from aluminum, and steel can cause basically galvanic corrosion, which is pretty bad. It basically, the metal's eating away itself, and I'm sure if you look it up on via YouTube what galvanic corrosion is, it's pretty darn bad. You have ID, which is your inner diameter of your tubing, and then OD, of course, is going to be outer diameter. The inner and outer diameter of your tubing will depict on what size barbs and or compressions you get. So ensure that you have the same ID and OD on your tubing as well as your fittings, because if you get a different size, with the exception of having 7/16 tubing going over a 1/2 inch barb for a tighter fit / seal, you may not have that seal if you choose a different option, and you might run into some leak issues. I personally haven't had any leaks in any of the water cooling loops since I started water cooling back in 2009. The only leak I had was due to my own error, which was not tightening a barb all the way on the EK Bay Spin reservoir. And that was with the Cosmos S case that I had when I started water cooling. Okay, pretty much I would say A good loop would probably cost you between probably 250, 300 to 400 now, just due because of the fluctuation of prices of water cooling parts, pumps, reses, all that stuff has gone up considerably since I started. So just set aside and keep that in mind. The more money that you have, that you invest in your loop, more or less the better performance you'll get out of it, if this makes sense. There are alternatives into cooling your loop. Some people do it, some people don't, and I'll get to that at towards the end of my video and everything. Alright, pretty much pumps. I call this the whole brain of what you have in your loop, if that makes sense. Without the pump, you have nothing. If the pump fails, pretty much computers nowadays have a thermal threshold. When, say, you hit 90C on your processor and your pump's not working, it does an automatic thermal shutdown and you're good to go. Some good pumps that I know are the MCP 355. There's also the MCP 35X, which has slightly a little higher head pressure than the MCP 355. Then there's also the MCP 655, and there's two kinds. There's one that has a vario, meaning you can do from 1 to 5 on the pump, or you can just have a set speed where you can't change it at all. When I got the vario pump, I just had it at 5 all the time. No degradation of that pump. I did it forever. Also, there is an OCZ HydroFlow, but this is a budget Jingwei. Again, those are budgets as well. Pretty much you'll be fine with an MCP 355 for majority of your water cooling builds. Also, just keep in mind the MCP 355 has 3/8" barbs. So if you want to do slightly bigger, you're going to have to get a pump top. Pump tops, definitely each manufacturer, whether it be Xspc, EK, Bits Power, it's going to range in price. So you might be able to get some, if you see them on sale, from $15 to $30. It just depends on where you get them. So do your homework and ensure that you got all the parts that you really want, okay? Having a pump top, especially for the MCP 355 pump, can improve flow and all that good stuff. It definitely improves the operability of the pump. I personally have the Xspc, I think they're DDC 3.2 18-watt ones. They're very similar to the MCP 35X pumps that are out by SwiftTech, so that's why I got that. I didn't tell you guys that, but a pump died on me, and I'll be able to resurrect it by getting, here's another thing. If water gets in the circuit board, it's pretty much going to fry your pump and it's not going to work. However, majority of problems that people have when their pump stop working, more than likely it's the PCB that caused the pump to be inoperable. So if you go online, I think it's DIYNHK.com or something like that. If you find their website, you'll be able to find where you can buy PCBs for the MCP 355. But you have to be good at soldering, so ensure that you know how to solder if you plan to do that. Also, with these PCBs, it increases the rate of the RPM that the pump spins at. So I would try to get some kind of, let me try to think. It would basically be a Molex resistor or Molex, something to reduce the electricity. I can't think of the word right now, and I apologize. If I do think of it, I'll definitely put a link in the description. So you want some kind of controller controlling the amount of how much speed you want to go to that pump, because if you use the PCB from DIYNHK, it's going to spin really fast and the pump's going to get really hot. So also, like I said, with the MCP 35X pump, that pump, from reading from Martin's review, it likes restriction. So yeah, if you have a restrictive loop, get the MCP35X pump. However, I would get the Xspc pumps that I have because it'll probably save you a little money compared to SwiftTech. Basically, they're all more or less the same pump, just rebranded, from what I've read and what I've heard. Okay, tubing. There's a lot of tubing manufacturers out there. Some people just go to your local Home Depot or Lowe's or hardware store in general, and they'll buy tubing there to save a lot of money. You have Primo Chill tubing. I know you have Xspc tubing, and this is just to list a couple of the manufacturers. I'm not going to list them all, but pretty much they're all going to be the same. Tygon tubing is expensive, but it's highly regarded as pretty much one of the best tubing you can get out there. So yeah, next, pretty much going off, we have pump, we got the tubing, we got tops. Next, we're going to go to reservoirs. Reservoirs, all it is enable you to fill up your loop. Some people don't use reservoirs, they use a T-line. And that, basically, if you don't have space for a reservoir, or you want to try to make your loop clean as possible, that's what you do, is that you basically have a T. So imagine a T like that. You fill in here, and then the water that has a T right here, if that makes sense, you have this line going into the pump in. So when it comes, it's not going to shoot up where you pour the water in. It's going to be sucked right in to the loop. So a lot of people do that. That can make your loop look a little bit cleaner, depending on your situation, and or if you don't have room for a reservoir. Reservoirs, it depends on the price that you're willing to pay. I can tell you that much. You have some reservoirs that can cost you $15, and then you have reservoirs that cost you up to $100, like the Frozen Q reservoirs that look absolutely sick, in my opinion. Basically, it has some form of acrylic that has been twisted. It has I believe it's a cathode, but instead of a cathode, I would prefer to use an LED, because LEDs generally last a little bit longer than the cathodes, because cathodes, as you guys know, is a gas. Also, with cathodes, it takes a little longer for the gas to kind of heat up to get the full brightness, versus LED. It's brighter, consumes less heat, and etc. Alright, next up, let's go ahead and talk about your CPU blocks. There's tons out there. I don't know how many there are out there. If I could do a review on this kind of stuff, I would definitely do that. Costs a lot of money to do reviews and everything like that. So, that being said, right now the absolute best water block that's out there, it's going to probably be the EK Supremacy, or the EK Supremacy Evo. So I'm just going to go here and look at the charts to make sure I'm recommending the top two. So that is correct. The Supremacy Evo is the top dog, and then the EK Supremacy is the next in line, and this is the most recent information that I got that was published on 8/2/2014. So those are going to be probably your high-end water blocks that cost a little bit more money. A really good budget one is the Raystorm block. I cannot emphasize that. Xspc Raystorm block is probably one of the best budget water blocks out there that still perform really, really good. During this review that I have right here, it outperformed the SwiftTech Apogee XL, the Bits Power Summit EF, the Coolants 380i, the Aqua Computer Qplex Cryos Pro. So yeah, it's still up there. And keep in mind, like with water blocks, depending on which one you can get or afford, you might get a 0.2 degree or 0.5 degree difference between high-end and low-end water blocks. So again, it just depends on your budget. Alright, next up we're going to go to thermal paste. For me, if you already don't know, I like at MX4. Now there's going to be a lot of, hoopla and, well, this is better, well, OCZ Freeze is better, or, Icy Diamond is better. I just prefer it because it's easy to, it comes out of the tube easy, it's not hard to spread out. I know with Icy Diamond, it's probably regards one of the best thermal paste out there. However, that paste is really, really thick, and from experience, if you like to still be able to read, the code or whatever you call it that's on your processor, that Icy Diamond essentially will erase that away, and this is from personal experience, and this has happened to other people as well. So that's why I prefer MX4. Also, with Icy Diamond, if you are planning to use it, please keep in mind it's not going to be the standard method. When you apply Icy Diamond, you want to do about a size of a pea and not the size of a grain of rice when you're using this thermal compound. Also, hint, if you are prepared to use Icy Diamond, to make it a little easier, take that tube of Icy Diamond and soak it into warm to medium hot water, I guess that makes sense, for maybe 2 minutes. Take that tube out and the paste will come out a lot easier and spread a lot easier. Just a little advice out there. Okay, next up we're going to go to barbs. There's a lot of barb sizes, so there's G and a quarter and G and 3/8. Pretty much G and a quarter is pretty much your standard size that I've been using. So on your, your Xspc, reses, pumps, and all that stuff, for the most part it's going to be G1 and a quarter. Just ensure that you get the correct size barb for all your connections that are going to be required in your loop. Xspc, I've used their parts, really, really good. Enzotech, those are good. I've also used Bits Power. Those are really good too. A lot of price variation between those, but Xspc I prefer. You also have the expensive ones that I personally have. It's going to be Monsoon fittings. They can be a little hard to use, especially with the tool, but I found out not even to use the tool, just hand tighten everything and you should be good to go, even though they give you that wrench. Okay, so we got let's see, we got the heart or the brain or whatever. So you got the heart, you have your pump, and then I would call almost like your veins. You got your tubing. With radiators, it's like the lungs of your loop. That's what I'm kind of comparing it to. They're the lungs, all right? So radiators are going to be really important in what you get. If people are complaining, well, I'm getting these crappy temperatures, first thing I ask is, what kind of radiator you're using, what kind of fans are you using, and what's your ambient temperature? Remember, more radiators in a loop doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get better temperatures. Just putting that out there, okay, guys? Budget, you could probably get the EK, or maybe EK, I don't know if you consider EK budget, but I know Xspc EX is a really good budget radiator. I personally have the EX 560 radiator. You also have the absolute best radiators right now is Alpha Cool, so that's going to cost some money. They have it, let me go look down on my charts. So basically the Alpha Cool Nexos UT60 is one of the best radiators out there as far as going up to 1800 RPM. Now once you exceed that 1800 RPM range and you go towards the 2200 300 to 3000 RPM range. The Swiftech in the MCR 320XP and the Alpha Cool UT60 basically have the same amount of dissipation. So it looks like here, I know the Black Ices generally love really high RPM fans, just from reading and everything like that. Also, some radiators you may have to experiment with as far as fan configuration. Some of them like a pull configuration, then a push. So it just depends on your radiator for sure. Alright, now we're going to go to fans. If you can find them at a decent price that isn't price gouging, I still recommend the Gentle Typhoon fans. They're one of the best fans I have ever used, and the reason why people recommend them is because airflow, static pressure, and the noise volume that they create is really, really good. Like, they're fairly low. Now, I have the 2150 RPM fans. They're fairly loud, so generally I have them at medium setting on my Lambtron FC8 fan controller. When I'm benching and everything like that, I crank them up because I don't care about the noise. So you'll be fine generally with an 1800 RPM fan for your water cooling loop. RX series radiators, generally you'll be fine with a 1600 RPM fan. So Panaflows and Deltas, those are your really 3000 RPM, sounds like a jet engine and everything like that. You have your Kazis, like I said, Gentle Typhoons. You have Xspc fans as well, and they're pretty good as well for being, what, $6 or $7 a fan. I did testing on it, comparing the Gentle Typhoon and these fans before, and they perform pretty good too. We also have Yatloons. Those are like the bottom of the barrel fans, if that makes sense. So if you want higher quality, it's going to cost you a lot more money. Okay, fan controllers. This is kind of optional if you want it or not. Just look at your fan, how much voltage it is required to start the fan, and then after that, how long does the voltage, or how much that voltage needs to be required to keep that fan up and running, excuse me. So just look at that, look at the voltage, how much it kicks out, because sometimes fans need a little bit more power to get it kicked up and running versus it just running standalone, if that makes sense. So that's totally option on you. The reason why I got it is because I like my water cooling to be silent. I can get it pretty much dead near silent. It's like silent right now compared to a lot of computers that I know. Let's go to clamps. You have clamps, zip ties. Zip ties, you can go to Home Depot, you know, Pep Boys or whatever. If you don't have money for clamps, you also can get the metal rings, which cost a little bit more money. Then also you can get the plastic clamps too that go around the barb. Squeeze it, and then when you want to take it off, you basically do either side in opposite direction. Lift that off, and it separates so you can take apart your loop. Coolant, distilled water is still my preferred choice. I use PT Nuke in my loop, or you can just use a silver coil. A lot of people have been asking me about dyes, and I can't recommend personally any dyes, but just ask people out there what they prefer. I've just had really bad experience with dyes, so I try to avoid them at all costs. If I want to get any kind of color or whatever effect in my loop, I generally try to get like black tubing, red tubing, orange tubing, and etc. However, if you do red tubing, you got to be careful, because when you do the UV red tubing, it almost comes out as a pink color. I actually know this from experience. I've had bad experience with Feezer 1. Some people have had really good experience with Feezer products and everything like that, but right now it seems like everybody's recommending Mayhem dyes. So if you were to do any kind of dye in your loop and you want to have some UV lighting going on to show your loop layout and everything, I would probably go off what the people are saying from the forums that I'm part of and get some Mayhem dyes. Alright, next up, generally when you get all your parts together, you figured out your loop and everything, you know, I'm going to show you this real quick, but I'm not going to redraw it like I did in one of my videos, but let me see if I could pull up my camera, and if you can even see this. Alright, if you guys can see that, draw a picture of your case and get an idea of how you want your loop to go. And pretty much how I have this drawn right here is pretty much the exact same way that my loop is lined up right now, minus some little changes I did, but more or less it's the exact same thing. Instead of having the pump right here, I actually have the two reses inside the case over here. So always draw it out, you know, get your radiator, calculate how many watts you would need to, you know, distribute or get rid of out of your loop. And from there, you know, choose your radiator, and then you'll choose your fans. Okay, compression fittings, I already did that. Water cooling cases, there's a ton of them out there. So water cooling cases, they're like a dime a dozen out there. And what I mean by that is that you're going to have different strokes for different folks. Yeah, you may laugh, ha ha ha, but it's really, really true out there in the water cooling community. Some people want the absolute best case, which I opted for. I like quality and everything like that. I got the STH10 case. Before that, I had the TH10 case by Case Labs. These are quality. People are going to complain about, well, why does it cost so much? And why do these cases, you know, why are they so big? Well, they're meant for the enthusiast. If you're going to spend, you know, $2,000 or more on just parts for your rig, I think you might be able to afford $700 for a really nice case. And that's what I opted for. Case Labs, cannot recommend them enough. They're great. They also came out with the, they have a ST10-2, which is a little bit smaller than the STH10. You can't mount the rads vertically on the sides, but they have it where you can mount a 480 horizontally. So you can do that, and then there's places at the bottom where you can mount radiators and everything like that. I did a build on that, so you can check that out if you want. They also have, you know, your NZXT cases. They have some really good cases. Who else? Corsair. I know there's like the Corsair 900D and everything like that, but I personally wouldn't like the magnetic door holders or whatever you call it on it. So, yeah. Alright, now kind of to cut back on the wiring and or, you know, your mess of a wires that a lot of people endure with. I try to be a perfectionist. Right now my computer is not to the perfection where I want it as far as cable management goes, but something that might be able to help you in cable management and reduce the amount of connectors you need in your computer is making a terminal block. I have pictures on how to do the terminal block via my water cooling guide, as well as I have a video on how I made a terminal block. Short story of how to make it is basically you go to your Home Depot, Lowe's, look for a terminal block, and then from there it's essentially a plastic block, and then it has metal like rectangle ports that are separated, and you get a Molex, and you use your black wire, negative, and then you use your yellow wire, which is going to be your 12 volt positive, and then you connect those two to the terminal block, and then you jump every other one, and there you go. You got 10 connections, and you can reduce the amount of connections that you need in your case. You can use this for pumps, you can use this for LEDs, you can use this for fans if you want, It all depends. Also, you can make that tonal block as big as you want or use it as small as you want. It just depends your needs and what you want to do. Alright, also with that tonal block, make sure you have wire stripper and you have some kind of spade connectors. I would highly recommend that as well. What's going on? Let's see if there's anything else that I would cover. I think that's about it. I'll include all the links and everything. My water cooling guide, as well as a new CPU block test as well. As far as your water cooling blocks for your GPUs, I think it's on personal preference and or find the manufacturer that makes the water block for your card. Some manufacturers only make blocks for certain cards versus others where they'll make you a plethora of it. So it's really going to depend. Tubing for your case, standard case, not the case like I got. Tubing, you probably want 10 to 15 feet. It's always better to have extra than less when you're putting together a loop. Now, when you start adding RAM water blocks and CPU, or not your CPU, but GPU blocks and everything like that, you might want to add a little extra, you know, just in case. I don't know how much you would need because I haven't really measured that out. I think 15 feet is pretty much good for a good solid loop. And it also depends on if you're going to use multiple cars. Are you going to do Crossfire? Are you going to do SLI? Do you plan to use the blocks that go on top of the water block for the GPUs and have it where it's a solid piece? Are you going to have it in serial? Are you going to have it in parallel for your GPUs and everything like that? Right now I am using a Xspc terminal semi parallel water block that fits on top of the GPUs itself, so it saves on some tubing and everything like that. So I think that is pretty much it. I'm just trying to think if I'm missing anything else. For chipset water blocks, that kind of depends if you want to do it or not. RAM water blocks, of course, that's just for looks, but it looks pretty cool. Your chipset, that depending on what motherboard you have and how the cooling is done on the motherboard, sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, getting a chipset water block can help you out in some instances. Okay, there's no guarantees I'll help you out a whole bunch, but for me, looking at the forums, they said the X79 chipset tends to run a little hotter, so getting a chipset water block definitely helped out. I know my friend Mike, he said his GPU temperatures, believe it or not, GPU temperatures actually reduced by a couple of degrees, I'm not sure how many, by putting the water block for the X79 on it. So I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, it dropped about maybe 5 degrees because he has now that chipset water cooling that. His board, generally my motherboard is roughly like 35 Celsius, I believe. So, I guess I might as well show you my mess of a loop, and just keep in mind this is still a work in progress. If you guys don't know about my situation, it's kind of, yeah, and I really don't want to get into that right now. So, I'm probably going to have to use a flashlight to show you guys my loop. So, if you guys hear my water loop, I apologize. So I'm probably going to have to hold this mic up so you can hear me clearly. Alright, now I don't have much lighting in my room, unfortunately, so let me see what we have going on as far as light-wise and quality. because the majority of the light is produced by my monitors. So I'm hoping that I might be able to get some of this down. Alright. So here we go, guys. This isn't going to be perfect because I am holding this with my hand. But I'm probably going to speak a little louder, so I apologize. These right here are the Xspc twin plate set water block kit that I got. These are cooling 32 gigs of the G-Skill Trident X 2400 megahertz RAM right here, and I have 3mm white LEDs implemented into the acrylic. It already comes pre-drilled, so go ahead and get in there so you guys can see. And I also sleeve the cables as well. These guys right here, you hear that? That is acrylic tubing. So I might need to get my flashlight out so you guys can see. So there we go, right here. That's acrylic tubing. So my friend and I worked on these. And then this right here, pretty much I would call it the heart of the loop. So you have your RAM water blocks and then your Xspc water block right there for the chipset. Pretty much all this is hard lined in, except for your CPU out right here. That's going to be your soft tubing and everything like that. So pretty much everything where there's a complex bend is soft tubing for the most part for the whole loop. Alright. Now I don't know if you can see the fan spinning, but these right here are the 2150 RPM fans that I did. And I painted them, took them apart, spray painted them black. These guys at the very bottom, I have 8 fans on the EX560 radiator. Right there. Alright. Now we're going to go to the front. Right here. These guys right here are the MN PC Tech Overkill fan grills, and it looks pretty awesome, and it worked out great. Pretty much there's a cover here, and pretty much I had that CNC'd and removed all the material. So I'm sorry again for the bad lighting and everything like that. And then right here, this is an Asus ROG. So you can see right here 4.6 gigahertz, roughly 4.7, and then my Lambtron fan controller. I have 2 power supplies that are in the back, 1600 watt EVGA, and then I have a 1200 Corsair. Now, since I have my Blue Yeti microphone and everything like that, I can show you how loud this loop really is to the best of my ability. So I got a lot of stuff on the table and I'm probably going to move it. So let me see. The Blue Yeti microphone that the wire comes with is very, very long. So right now I'm just going to show you when I'm benching how loud it is. Cranking all the fans up. Alright guys, so this might be the time to turn down the volumes of your PCs and everything like that. So here's the noise. That was the top section, the bottom. Now you're not going to really hear any noise coming from the bottom because they're Cougar fans, but in the front you will. So yeah, so let me go ahead and put this camera right here. So the reason why you're going to hear the 2150s compared to the Cougar fans is the Cougar fans are actually 140 millimeters big. The 2150s, of course, they spin a lot at a higher RPM than the Cougar fans I have. So of course they're gonna sound a lot louder than the Cougar fans. When I reduce the volume to my computer, or I should say reduce the voltage that's going into them, it's pretty much darn near silent. And the Cougar fans don't produce any audible noise, like a slight, little hum, but it's not overbearing. And these are at full blast too. So if I do these halfway, okay, everything's halfway. Now when I do this, when I'm just doing little light gaming, browser, using YouTube and all that stuff, the predominant noise that you're going to get from your loop, if you create it right, are just going to be from these pumps. And these are the two MCP pumps, or Lian Lang pumps from Xspc. And that's all the noise you're going to get. So you can basically have a damn near silent loop, depending on what kind of water cooling you want. Do you want it for strictly for benching, for gaming? What situation do you want your water cooling to fit your needs the best? So you just have to think about that when you come up with the parts and everything. This is pretty much the conclusion of my video. This is a 41-minute video, good God. If you have made it this far, I appreciate it. I hope this video helps you out in some way. Look out for PC news you can use, probably coming out either later on tonight or tomorrow. It's probably going to be an impromptu PC news you can use. I'm still teaching myself how to use Sony Vegas, so I've been watching a lot of tutorials and everything like that. So it's kind of overwhelming using this video editing program. If anybody wants to do one-on-one, show me the ropes and show me, whoa, made me jump a little. Show me the ropes about it, that would be greatly appreciated. But if not, I'm just going to use Google, because Google can be your best friend when it comes to certain situations, such as the video program that I'm using for videos. So, thank you for the support. Thank you for subscribing, everybody. I really appreciate it. And as always, comment, subscribe, rate this video, click that like button, and you guys have a great day now.